Yeah, yeah.
She is also there, but still. She's still a usable old lady, so I'll have her work more. Without knowing I was listening, Catherine, the wife of the eldest son, was happily talking to someone on the phone. Then, when I moved to the new house, come over for a visit. Saying this, she hung up the phone. Passed by me on her bicycle with shopping bags from the supermarket. As I watched her back, I muttered, "I'll get you for this," and, with a certain resolution, I called the real estate agent and said, "I gladly accept that matter. My name is Emily. I will be 56 this year. At the end of last year, I lost my husband, who was 9 years older than me, after 5 years of caregiving. Now, I live alone in a familiar apartment complex. It was indeed lonely spending New Year's alone, so I asked my eldest son and his wife, who live nearby, won't you come over for New Year's? However, they made vague excuses like, we're a bit busy. We have various things going on, and didn't even stop by our house. Originally, even when I asked for help with my husband's care, my eldest son and his wife always said they were too busy and hardly ever visited. Feeling down by myself wouldn't help. So I decided to start something new with the inheritance from my husband. The place where I live is a tourist spot, and my husband used to run a souvenir shop. When I visited as a tourist, he fell in love with me at first sight. Despite our age difference, he was persistent, and we ended up getting married. After marrying, I helped out at the store and enjoyed working there. The shop was often visited by foreign tourists. And I could speak several languages as I lived abroad for a long time, was highly valued. Even after having 2 children, I worked there whenever I had time, enjoying it. After my husband suffered a cerebral hemorrhage and fell ill, I took over the running of the souvenir shop. Although I mostly left it to a veteran head clerk, and only occasionally attended meetings or received reports as the owner, I handed over the souvenir shop to the head clerk, who had served us for many years, and bought a house to try my hand at a trendy private accommodation. This is because my husband disliked owning a home, and we always lived in a rented apartment. After the funeral, it'll just become an empty house and a burden to the children. We don't need it. A person can live with just a little bit of space. That was his logic. It might be true, but living in a lovely house was my dream. However, living alone in a big house would be empty and meaningless. That's when I thought of the homestay business, popular among foreign tourists. I love interacting with strangers. Originally, when I was single, I was active, traveling alone overseas and making friends in various countries. Building a beautiful house and hosting people in it would not only fulfill my long-held dream but also contribute to the tourist spot that had taken care of me for so many years. If I find a successor for the homestay before I die, it won't become vacant. Once I set my mind to it, I couldn't sit still and immediately took action. Starting something new made me forget my loneliness, and my gloomy feelings disappeared as if they were a lie. Fortunately, I found a very nice new house. It was a modern-style house, conveniently located near a station. It seemed like it would please foreign tourists. However, due to its elaborate decoration, it was a bit pricey. So it seemed it hadn't found a buyer yet. I decided on the spot and bought it in cash. In fact, my husband had inherited a considerable fortune from his parents. But as a businessman, he had saved it for a rainy day without spending much of it. Therefore, having inherited a substantial inheritance, I still had savings left even after buying the new house. Then, I began studying the procedures for starting a homestay with great enthusiasm. Then, to my surprise, I got a call from Catherine, my eldest son's wife. "Hi Emily, it's been a while. How have you been feeling? Any changes?" Catherine's attitude had completely changed from her usual prickly self to a sweet, ingratiating tone. Suspicious, I responded coldly, "Nothing much has changed. How about you? Still busy as usual?" And she replied, "Not at all, not at all. I always have time to talk to you. I wondered what was going on. Actually, when my husband had suggested that our eldest son, Tom, take over the souvenir shop, he had refused, saying, "I don't want such a shabby shop." He then left home and was doing something like an event waiter in the city. I heard that he met Catherine there and they got married. We weren't even invited to the wedding, they registered their marriage without telling us. So I knew nothing about her background. After getting married, for some reason, they returned to our countryside. Tom became a truck driver at a company run by an old acquaintance. Rumors suggest he had done some risky things and fled the city. Catherine seems to be working part-time, but her attendance seems to be poor and I have not heard good things about her. By the way, Tom's sister had moved to Florida after getting married. So the only relatives I could call family here were Tom and his wife. I tried to reach out to them, but they seemed annoyed, so I thought, well, they're adults, let them do what they want, and I left them alone. Despite my confusion, Catherine continued to talk non-stop. By the way, Emily, you're being secretive, aren't you? If you bought a new house, you should tell us. Huh? Oh, that house? As I tried to continue, that house is, she cut me off, asserting, it's for us, right? Huh? I saw it. I mean, you didn't consult us, but... Well, if it's such a lovely house, it's fine, don't worry. No, that's not for you. I bought it for the homestay business. As I managed to interject, Catherine, seemingly not listening, handed the phone to Tom. Mom? Thanks for setting up the house. When are we moving?
Yeah.
You know. We'll be moving to the family home next month. I'll let you know the date. Listen. It's not for you guys, I bought it for the homestay business. Huh? Homestay? More important than us? That can't be right. Tom seemed to have forgotten his past actions. Then, when Catherine took the phone back, she said, "Well then, thank you," and hung up. I felt a headache coming on. After a while, I received an email from them, with the date of their move written in it. As I was pondering what to do, I happened to see Catherine at the supermarket. I overheard her saying,
Yeah.
She is also there, but still. She's still a usable old lady, so I'll have her work more. I realized that I needed to teach them that the world doesn't revolve around their convenience. On the day they said they were moving, I was enjoying the flowers in a completely different location. The weather was good, and it was a wonderful day. Suddenly, when I checked my phone, I saw 26 missed calls from Catherine. Finding it troublesome, I decided to cancel my cell phone service. My new life didn't require the old phone number. And there was no need to explain myself to someone who wouldn't listen. And twist facts to suit their convenience. I got a new smartphone. My husband had always said, "You don't need a smartphone," and only allowed me to have a cell phone. Surprised by its convenience after attending a few smartphone classes, I quickly learned to use it and began applying it to my new job. Yes, now I am involved in a new business in a new land. It was a tourism business in Florida. Actually, my daughter, who had married and moved to Florida, wanted to start a winery and vineyards with her husband. "We're starting a winery," she had said. "Mom, won't you come and help us? We need someone who knows the business." She had been inviting me ever since my husband passed away. Perhaps she was worried about me living alone. However, at that time, I had plans for the homestay business and had declined, saying, "I appreciate the thought and am happy, but it's a bit difficult right now." But then, somehow, Tom and Catherine misunderstood and were intent on taking over the new house, even planning to use me like a housekeeper. Just before I learned this fact, someone had approached me, desperately wanting to buy a new house. A real estate agent mediated the deal, and the buyer was even willing to pay more than the asking price. When asked why, they were in the process of moving out of their condominium, where they originally planned to build a new house. However, the construction of their new house was delayed. And to their shock, the construction company went bankrupt. As the deadline to leave their apartment approached and they were at a loss. Wondering whether to look for a new rental property, they found the house I had bought. They had always wanted a house near the wife's parents' home. And had even informally viewed it before I bought it, and had loved it. Regretting not choosing it themselves. Renting a new place would involve costs like security deposits and key money. Their child was about to enter elementary school. And they didn't want to transfer schools, making their property search within the school district more challenging. Annoyed by Tom and Catherine's presumptuous moving plans, I decided to go along with this family's offer. They were a very nice family, and I was happy to help them. Though they offered to pay more, I only took the real estate fees and gladly handed over the house to them. Honestly, I wasn't attached to the location, and thought it would be happier for a family who saw it as their one and only choice to live there. Thus, my homestay plan was thwarted by Tom and Catherine. But I took it as a sign and decided to boldly go to my daughter and son-in-law's place. Moving to a new place at this age was a bit daunting, but being naturally active, I gradually became excited about starting a new life. Perhaps the long period of caregiving had made me more introverted. I felt like I was returning to my true self in this new land. Playing with my grandchildren, my daughter's children, seemed to rejuvenate me. As planned, to turn my daughter and son-in-law's farm into a winery, I first properly greeted the locals and started building connections. In these times of high tourist activity, my ability to speak several languages was highly valued, and I was kept busy helping out in various places. Thanks to this, I became friendly with the local tourism people and, at the right time, I put up signs directing visitors to my daughter's winery, and placed brochures I had made in local tourist information centers. Next, I set up a cafe near the winery, attracting tourists with delicious and photogenic desserts. The cafe was funded by the money from the sale of the aforementioned house. Also, my daughter's house was large, so we included a homestay business. Initially, it was tough with little recognition, but as good reviews spread by word of mouth, it became a popular tourist spot. While I was busy and leading a fulfilling life, Catherine, having somehow found out, called my daughter's phone. Pretending not to know anything, my daughter said, "What are you talking about? My mother isn't here." But as Catherine continued, "I'm worried about Emily. She suddenly disappeared. If I did something wrong, I want to apologize. Please don't hide her, tell me where she is." My daughter felt pity and handed me the phone. Thinking she couldn't possibly be repentant, I answered the phone, and as expected, she burst out hysterically, "Emily, what are you doing? Leaving like that is unacceptable. We've had a tough time since then." My daughter looked at me worriedly, regretting her decision. When we arrived at the house with our moving stuff, there was a completely unknown family living there. We even went to the police. I felt guilty for causing trouble to the family I sold the house to, realizing I hadn't thought that far. When we went to the police and the real estate agent, they said you gave that house to that family. I was so embarrassed. Despite months passing since then, Catherine remembered her anger vividly. And after a bout of complaints, she suddenly ordered, "Anyway, Emily, come back immediately." "What? Why?" I replied curtly, and Catherine said something I couldn't believe. "Why? Why are you asking? We're the eldest son's family. It's tradition that the eldest son inherits the house. You sold the house without telling us. Now, you need to build a new one for us." My daughter and I exchanged looks of disbelief and decided to try reasoning with her. "Look, Catherine. We originally lived in an apartment, so there's no house to speak of. That's not the point. A parent's property is inherited by the eldest son. That includes your labor." As I was left speechless by the term labor force, my daughter snatched the phone, fuming with anger, and shouted, Please don't treat my mother as a labor force. What's wrong with you, anyway? It was you and my brother who stole Mom's dream, wasn't it? Huh? Stole? We were just trying to give a useless old person a sense of purpose. You're the one who got in the way. Daughter widening her eyes in shock and taking a deep breath. My daughter then shouted even more forcefully through the phone. What are you even saying? Useless old person? Mom has contributed to the local tourism industry and shouldered the burden of Dad's care all by herself. She's my pride. I won't allow you to mock her any further. Saying this, she snorted in defiance and waited for the other side's reaction. Then Catherine, who had been silent, suddenly started crying. Even if you say that, why do I have to go through this? My daughter looked at me, so I took the phone. Listen, Catherine. I think I've already given enough inheritance to Tom. You can use that to buy a house, right? Then Catherine made a shocking confession. That money, it's all gone. What do you mean? I spend it on shopping. Once I start buying, I just can't stop. I haven't even told Tom about it. What? Perhaps feeling guilty for having been silent so long, Catherine began to cry like a child and started talking non-stop. Actually, that house was bought with your and Tom's inheritance. I've told Tom about it. He's really angry with you. I'm trying to stop him from calling you. No wonder I hadn't heard from Tom. So, please, Emily, help me. Please come back. Her words were almost a scream. I sighed in exasperation and said, That's a problem between you and Tom, you two need to talk it out. Catherine suddenly stopping her crying, Catherine snapped. So even after all this pleading, it's no use. Remember this, you old hag, and hung up. Clearly, she was emotionally unstable. Afterwards, my daughter blocked her calls and explained the situation to her brother, my son Tom, over the phone. Tom was as arrogant as ever, but seemed genuinely shocked to hear that Catherine had squandered the money, exclaiming, Seriously? What has she done? And then, unbelievably, asked my daughter for a favor. Hey, sis, you got your inheritance, right? I'm the victim here, right? Can you give me half of your inheritance? Daughter narrowing her eyes in disbelief, my daughter replied sternly. No way. She's your wife, you deal with it, and hung up. Daughter shaking her head in disappointment, she muttered. It's pitiful, really. Let's just stop dealing with them. I declared that was the intention all along. There were times I wondered if I had gone wrong in raising him. But their actions, neglecting their bedridden father and trying to move into my new house without permission, were beyond my control and entirely their responsibility as adults. Eventually, I heard through the grapevine that they got divorced. Tom tried to claim back his lost assets and alimony, but she dodged asset seizure by declaring bankruptcy, leaving him unpaid. Their whereabouts after that remained unknown. Years later, Tom appeared at my daughter's house, in ragged clothes, kneeling on the ground, crying and begging for a job. It seemed he had been through a lot. After discussing it with my daughter and her husband, we decided to let him work on the winery. Perhaps because of his rough lifestyle, Tom often overslept in the morning, and we had a hard time with him. But Tom gradually regained a healthy complexion with fresh air and good food. His naturally friendly nature helped him get along well with the tourists. It seemed that the new life in a new land had changed him. Holding a chef's license, he now prepares meals for the homestay, receiving praise from guests, to which he responds with beaming smiles. Surprisingly, about a year later, when my daughter and her husband tried to pay him a modest salary, he refused, saying, No, it's fine. Just having a job here is enough for me. It appeared Tom had finally understood the value of family. Eventually, Tom married a woman who visited as a tourist and opened a local cuisine restaurant a little away from us. The startup cost was a loan from me, but he has been diligently repaying it every month. His new wife is a hard worker, willingly helping in the winery when needed. My daughter's children eagerly await the arrival of their soon-to-be cousin. Of course, I'm also looking forward to it. The happy future that unfolded before my eyes was unimaginable. At the time I sold the new house. I can't help but hope that this happiness lasts forever.
On the day of our wedding anniversary, my husband and I, along with our daughter, sat around the table and enjoyed a cheerful meal together. Towards the end of the meal, my husband pulled out a long, slender paper bag.
Since today is our wedding anniversary, I've prepared a special wine. You like it, don't you?
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy.
I'll uncork it for you, just wait a moment. I think the wine opener was in the kitchen.
My husband said that with deliberate casualness, then got up and headed towards the kitchen. He returned shortly after with the wine poured into glasses, bringing one over to me.
Here, please have some.
Thank you, I'll take it. The moment I touched the wine that was offered to me, I let out a groan. I'm in so much pain. With a pained expression, I clutched my throat and collapsed on the spot. Seeing me writhing in agony, our 7-year-old daughter started crying and screaming. Dad! Mom! We need to call an ambulance right away! However, my husband merely looked down at me with cold eyes as I struggled and suffered. Beside him, our daughter kept tugging at his clothes, continuing to scream for help. When I became barely able to move, my husband brushed off our daughter's arm and left the house without a word. Just after the front door closed, I slowly managed to get up. Seriously, just as I expected. My name is Meredith Shepard. I'm a 34-year-old married woman. I'm somewhat of a recognized figure as a composer. Even after having children, I continued to provide songs for famous singers. Some songs I composed when I was single were even chosen as theme songs for dramas, which has allowed me to live a slightly more affluent life thanks to the royalties. I met my husband Kevin at the reception of a friend's wedding. He worked as a salesperson for a beer brewery, and our mutual love for alcohol brought us closer. Kevin was a bit of a free spirit, not one to think ahead, but those traits always seemed endearing to me at the time, I thought. We enjoyed drinking together on weekends, and eventually got married a few years later. Soon after, we were blessed with our daughter Hazel. One thing I noticed after getting married was that Kevin hardly ever did any housework or childcare. Even after 6 months since Hazel was born, he seemed to completely ignore me, lounging on the sofa while I ran around busy. At that moment, Hazel, who was sleeping in her crib, started crying.
Hey, Meredith. Hazel's crying, you know.
Hold on, I'm using the stove right now. Could you please hold her for a bit?
Huh? It's such a hassle. Besides, Hazel probably prefers you, Mom.
With such excuses, Kevin kept his eyes glued to his phone. I sighed, I turned off the stove, and comforted Hazel. Hey, Kevin, I've been meaning to say this for a while. Could you help out a bit more with household chores and childcare? Doing everything alone is really tough.
Huh? Why me?
Why? Because I also work in between, and Hazel is our child, right? As I earnestly expressed this, Kevin chuckled dismissively.
Well then, why don't we just hire a housekeeper or a babysitter?
Huh?
Meredith, you're raking in royalties, right? Shouldn't that make things a breeze for you?
It's not like that at all. I want to save money for Hazel's future. And we agreed before we got married not to raise our standard of living.
Did we? Well, anyway, I'm tired from working outside, so you should handle everything at home.
He doesn't take things seriously and responds in this manner. I eventually gave up and started handling household chores and childcare by myself. Hazel has grown up healthy and is now 6 years old. My in-laws wanted to celebrate Hazel's enrollment in elementary school, so we decided to have a dinner party. They live about an hour away by car, and we have a good relationship. My father-in-law, Keith, has a strong sense of justice and dislikes dishonesty. Although he can be strict, he's very kind to me. On the other hand, my mother-in-law Martha has a calm and gentle personality and is quite charming.
Grandma, thank you for buying me the school bag.
At the dinner party in the restaurant, Hazel showed off her brand new school bag.
Hazel has grown so much, and it's all thanks to Meredith.
With that, my father-in-law tilted his cup towards me. I felt embarrassed. Oh no, not at all. Hazel is such a good kid, so she makes things easier for me every day.
Well, she's my daughter after all,
Kevin said proudly for some reason. I just chuckled and let it slide. By the way, Meredith, I heard you're going to write the theme song for a movie next time. In response to my mother-in-law's voice, I answered, Yes, it's almost finished and the movie will be released next month.
Kevin, you sure got yourself an amazing wife. She's quite a catch.
Although my father-in-law addressed Kevin, he seemed inexplicably unhappy.
But you know, she doesn't exactly let me live luxuriously, even though she's making money, you know?
Huh? My in-laws and I were surprised, but Kevin continued regardless.
I mean, I thought being a famous composer would mean I could live a luxurious life too, but she hardly gives me any spending money, and she's so stubborn about not raising our standard of living. She's really stingy.
Hold on, Kevin. What are you saying? Even the luxury apartment you're living in, Meredith bought it, right? My mother-in-law scolded him, and my father-in-law followed suit.
That's right, Kevin. In general, it's the man's responsibility to provide for the family. If you have time to rely on Meredith, why not make an effort to increase your own salary? Yeah, I got it.
When Kevin grimly acknowledged, he fell silent. Despite feeling a bit awkward, I felt grateful for my in-laws' support. Was it around that time when Kevin started coming home late every night, citing busy work? Initially, I didn't pay much attention considering that salespeople often have frequent client meetings. However, even on days off, he wasn't at home, and when he did return, he was constantly on his phone. His attitude towards Hazel also became increasingly cold. One Sunday, we had plans we made earlier in the week, so I woke up Kevin, who was still asleep, to remind him.
Dad, wake up. It's already past 9 o'clock. You said we were going out together today, remember?
Then Kevin, who was lying in bed, pushed Hazel away without saying a word. Hazel fell on her bottom, her eyes welling up with tears. Hey, what are you doing? While holding Hazel, who was crying, I protested against him, but when he got up, he looked grumpy.
I have plans today, and I wanted to sleep a little longer. You're forcing me to wake up as always.
What? That wasn't the plan. Besides pushing our daughter like that.
Shut up. You guys are annoying. Get out of the bedroom now.
Hazel and I were pushed out of the bedroom, and Kevin after that dressed up and went out somewhere. What's with that attitude? Treating Hazel like that? I can't forgive it. While trying to appease Hazel's mood, I felt my distrust towards Kevin growing. Then, one evening, a month later, I was exhausted after a deadline at work that day, so I put Hazel to bed and fell asleep early. I woke up in the middle of the night, thirsty, and when I went to the kitchen for a drink, I heard Kevin's voice chatting happily from the living room. It seemed he was talking to someone on the phone. I wondered who he was talking to. As I strained my ears, these words suddenly caught my attention.
You're the only one I love, Julia.
I widened my eyes and froze. This was undoubtedly a conversation with his affair partner. My blood boiled, and just as I was about to confront Kevin, he uttered a meaningful phrase.
The execution will be on our anniversary, 3 days from now. Everything will be according to plan.
Hearing the content of the conversation, I shrank in fear. What? Kevin was cheating on me? And to think he had such a terrifying plan? I quietly recorded his conversation on my phone and returned to the bedroom before Kevin arrived. He soon came into the bedroom and started snoring heavily beside me. I couldn't sleep at all that night. The next day after Kevin went to work, I stayed home alone and organized my thoughts. At first, I was overwhelmed with sadness from the betrayal, but gradually intense anger started to build up. So that's how it is. Well, if that's the case, I have my own plans too. Just wait and see. I bought surveillance cameras from an electronics store and installed them in the house. And so, on the anniversary that arrived 3 days later, Kevin began speaking to me kindly from the morning.
Meredith, today is our wedding anniversary, right?
Yes, it is. Did you remember? I responded casually.
Of course. Lately, I've been busy with work and haven't been able to be home much. But I'll be back early today to celebrate our anniversary together as a family.
That's wonderful. I'll be preparing a feast at home, so look forward to it.
Oh, Meredith, I love you.
Kevin smiled at me and went to work as I pretended to know nothing. Meanwhile, I proceeded with the preparations for the plan methodically. As 6 p.m. approached, I waited at home, having prepared a feast for Kevin's return. Welcome home, Kevin.
Welcome back, Daddy.
Hazel seemed delighted to see Kevin returning earlier than usual. I am about to show her a hell of a scene. I silently apologized to Hazel in my mind.
Whoa, what a feast. Let's dig in right away.
We gathered around the table and enjoyed our meal with cheerful conversation. As we neared the end of the meal, Kevin pulled out a long, thin paper bag.
Today is our wedding anniversary, so I prepared a special wine. Meredith, you'll like it, right?
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy.
I'll uncork it for you. Just wait a moment. Let's see, the wine opener was in the kitchen, right?
My husband said so deliberately and got up from his seat, heading towards the kitchen. Then he brought the wine poured into the glass to me.
Here you go.
Thank you, Kevin. I'll have it. The moment I put the wine offered to my lips, I let out a groan. Ah, I'm in so much pain. With a pained expression, I clutched my throat and collapsed on the spot. Seeing me writhing in agony, our 7-year-old daughter started crying and screaming.
Dad! Mom, we need to call an ambulance.
However, my husband only looked down at me with cold eyes as I struggled. Next to me, our daughter continued to tug at the hem of his clothes, screaming. When I became unable to move, barely breathing, my husband brushed off our daughter's arm and left the house in silence. Just after the front door closed, I slowly sat up. Wow, just as I expected.
Huh? Mom?
Seeing me acting cool, Hazel was left dumbfounded. I embraced my daughter, tears and snot covering her. Hazel, I'm sorry. This was just a prank. I'm sorry for surprising you.
Huh? A prank? Geez, Mom, I was really surprised.
There were some people watching us dumbfounded from the shadows. Kevin returned home late at night.
Hey, Hazel, are you already asleep?
Saying that, Kevin enters the house. I turn off the lights in the living room and hide in the darkness. Welcome home, Kevin.
Huh?
When I turn on the lights in the living room, Kevin gasps. Seeing me standing there nonchalantly, he collapses in shock.
You? Why?
Why aren't I dead, you mean? He looks up at me with a face almost bursting with rage as I inform him with a smile. That wine was for pretending to drink. I knew about your plan. On the day I eavesdropped on Kevin's phone call, he said such things.
You'll provide the poison, won't you? You'll get me the tasteless, odorless stuff, right? She likes wine, so if you put it in wine, she'll be all over it. Just make it look like she took her own life because of work stress. Once that woman is gone, everything will go according to plan. The insurance money on her, her royalties, this apartment, they'll all be ours. Let's start a new life with that.
When Kevin realized I had grasped the plan, he shouted angrily, his face turning red.
You? Were you eavesdropping?
Eavesdropping is such bad manners, huh? It's worse to talk about such things at home. Thanks to that, I narrowly escaped death. When I said this with a smile, Kevin began to tremble uncontrollably. He slowly took out an unfamiliar small bottle from my bag. He had probably put it there to make it look like I had taken my own life.
If I'm caught, there's no helping it. Then I'll shove this into your mouth right now. There's still time.
With a cornered expression, Kevin approached menacingly. Just as I tried to step back and escape, suddenly a loud voice echoed.
Kevin, are you not going to stop? Huh? Dad?
Standing there were his parents with a fierce expression.
Why are you and Mom here? We were called by Meredith and have been here since evening. Huh? We've been watching the footage from the cameras set up in another room all this time. I saw you pouring the contents of the bottle into the wine glass and putting it into Meredith's bag. My father-in-law pointed to a single surveillance camera.
It captured the entire scene of my husband's actions, which his parents hiding in another room watched. Kevin had a shocked expression upon noticing the camera's presence.
That's
not all. I also recorded the contents of the conversations you had on the phone that day. I played back the recorded audio on the spot. His parents grimaced at the disgusting contents, and Kevin turned pale. Recorded phone calls and camera footage, and the wine you left unfinished earlier. With this much evidence, handing you over to the police will be easy.
No, please.
Kevin first crawled towards his parents.
Dad, Mom, help me. You don't want your son to become a criminal, do you? You idiot.
My father-in-law hit Kevin with all the force he could muster. His mother scorned him as he was sent flying, looking at him like he was a piece of filth.
Trying to kill Meredith was one thing, but what about that attitude towards crying Hazel? You're a disgrace as a human being. We no longer see you as our son. We've already reported to the police a while ago. They should be arriving soon. You're going to behave yourself quietly.
Realizing he had been abandoned by his parents, Kevin staggered towards me with a tear-streaked and snotty face.
Meredith.
What is it? Don't come near me.
Meredith, please forgive me. If you don't press charges against me, I can avoid arrest. I only love you. Let's live happily together again with Hazel.
I shouted at Kevin. Are you out of your mind? Who forgives someone who tried to take their life?
I'm sorry. I'll do anything. Please.
I'll never forgive you or your mistress. You'll pay for your sins behind bars at most. In the next moment, Kevin slumped dejectedly as sirens approached from afar. Through lawyers, our divorce was finalized. Kevin's parents paid a hefty sum as compensation for the trouble. Kevin's affair partner seemed to be a pharmacy student. She tried to take my life by using poison obtained from the university. When I demanded compensation from her, her parents wired the money. I've decided I won't forgive her either. Kevin went behind bars, but neither his parents nor I visited him. They say they'll take Kevin in once he's released. They promised to find him work on a tuna fishing boat through relatives. If he never comes near me and Hazel again, that's fine. On the other hand, I've moved to a distant place with my daughter and lead a peaceful life. I told Hazel, Daddy went far away for work. But when she said,
he doesn't need to come back anymore,
I couldn't help but smile a little. From now on, I will look forward to my daughter's growth, work hard at my job, and live positively.